So, welcome to the Programmatic Digest podcast. Today we're with Eric Tilbury. Eric, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Us as well. So, Eric, if you could introduce yourself on what's your experience on the ad tech world and how has it been so far, so the audience can start knowing a bit more about you.
So I am the head of Programmatic and Solutions Engineering. I have been at Anuvo now. I feel like I'm starting to become a dinosaur. I've been here for 14. I think this is my year 14. So I've seen, a lot of the evolution of Programmatic. I wasn't there from the very beginning. Pretty close. But yeah, it's been kind of a wild ride, right? It's always a bumpy ride. Everyone's learning stuff. There's always new stuff coming out. Yeah, that's a little background on myself.
Amazing. Yeah. Like being for 10 years, it's been a long time. And have you been working more different parts of the space? Like, for example, personally for me, like I've had the pleasure to work a lot on the demand side and lately more on the publisher side. So there are definitely different problems, but of course everything's connected.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's funny is buyers are trying to lower their CPMs and sellers are trying to raise their RPMs, right? Like you always have that balance. Yeah, I have worked both on the supply side and the buy side. Anuvo, I come from a company that was called Netseer, and Anuvo purchased that company. What was it, like 10 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that. But Netseer had both a publisher side and a buy side, and I worked on both the publisher monetization side and the buy side at the same time. So it actually gave me like a good, full look at the entire space, right? Of like, what do publishers care about? What do buyers care about? How do you satisfy everyone? What is good for everybody? So it gave me kind of a unique look, like, as you know, right? You've worked on both sides, how you can appreciate like what a seller needs, what a buyer needs, and really, change your perspective to satisfy, everything that goes on along those lines from the buy side to the sell side.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was actually very curious to understand what are some of the solutions and things that you're doing in Anuvo. Am I pronouncing that correct?
Yeah, Anuvo. Yeah. So at Anuvo, we have our own proprietary tech, right? Like there's a lot of solutions that kind of like they wrapper into other things, they kind of Frankenstein things together. But Anuvo, even at the core of like what Netseer was started, like Netseer started with just all engineers. They didn't even have a sales team. So it was very much so build everything yourself, manage everything yourself, and like, if something goes wrong, it's on you, right? Like you don't have to go bark down someone else's door. And we take a different approach to ad tech where all of ad tech, well, I won't say all of ad tech, a lot of ad tech is really built off of the user ID and needing to farm user IDs and having to process massive QPS to see what kind of user ID this is, who this is, and make a decision on this user. We take a different approach where we actually model content. So you could think of us at like the most basic definition of what we are. We're a custom intent engine where we're trying to predict the intent of the user on the other side based off of the content consumption that's happening at the time, right? And I like to very much so think of it as more of like a contextual 2.0, where we're using contextual signals, but we go beyond just page level signals. We're saying like how much is this content trending right now, right? Like, is there more content being produced about this certain subject that matches this client's model? Geographically, does it make sense, right? And then we're going and making that decision completely in real time. Like we're not putting users in segments. We're not putting any inventory in segments. It's all completely a decision that happens right in open RTB. So when you don't rely on IDs that get pushed around and you don't rely on it, well, you don't have any latency, right? Like you can make very good, accurate, and fast decisions because you're not passing the decision to anyone else. You're not worried about match rates, right? You are just predicting the intent of the user on the other side and how well does this match my client's custom model in real time, right? And that's, the product is literally called the intent key. Right? It's a great name for it because you're just trying to predict the intent of the user on the other side, and you're defining an audience, and you're staying in front of that audience no matter what happens in the world, right? Like there's so many things that can happen that change the way that users consume content, the way that users feel about a certain subject. Like that rapidly changes. It can change literally with a tweet. Right, like Kevin Durant figured that out with his burner accounts, right? Like the sentiment, the way that someone feels about a certain subject, it changes rapidly. And this solution, it stays in front of that, it adjusts for you, and it figures out, where it needs to serve ads and where it doesn't need to serve ads.
Absolutely. And that sounds very, very interesting. Like I feel like with the past couple of years where we were expecting to live in a cookieless world, even though we're not, there's been a lot of like back and forth in order, like, especially on the publisher side, to understand like what are the best IDs. They're all different. It requires a lot of integration. So just understanding like this approach that is more related to content, it's quite interesting. And I could guess that this is not only related to monetization, but also like it would help a publisher to predict like what are the best contents to continue like producing content in general, right? Like what are like some notes or verticals.
As long as publishers are producing good and not just AI slop, right? Like they get rewarded with advertising, right? Like that's the beauty of it, right? Like it's going and being able to say like, I want to serve ads on content that matters to users, right? And no, exactly what you said. I mean, and your other point on the IDs, like the cookieless future and all that, right? Like it was like kind of like the boogeyman was coming, right? Like IDs were dying, and ad tech was scared, and like, what do we do? But it was kind of broken from day one, right? Like from inception, it was kind of broken because in programmatic, everything is so fragmented, right? Like there's so many different owners of different portions of ad tech, right? And it flows through so many different hands. Where the walled gardens, like they are very certain on who that user is, right? They own the entire ecosystem. They own all the pipes. So in programmatic now, when you say, okay, I'm just going to upload static list of IDs, or I'm going to upload a list of IDs that refreshes every hour, 2 hour, whatever, right? And then I'm going to push that into a DSP. There's a match rate that happens. There's a match rate that happens from DMP to DSP, right? And now you're saying, okay, I had that list that I thought was good. I had AI create it, whatever, but it's not, I want to go and target it on an SSP, right? Like I want to go and target it in an auction. There is a match rate from DSP to SSP on those IDs. So now you have these IDs that you're using as the source of truth, like your 100% source of truth. You're loading them up on a line item. And this is where the problem really happens is I literally just said it on Twitter yesterday. I would take the over that 95% plus of buyers don't optimize their supply, right? So they load that line item up on they load that segment up on a line item, and then they go and blindly buy against that list of IDs, right? And then fraudsters are just like, licking their chops, and they're just dropping IDs into bid requests, right? And there's no user that's really there. That ID probably was a real ID, but they just scraped it off of something, right? They took it somehow. And that's where you have the massive merry-go-round of fraud. And what's even worse, you start going into third-party attribution. Third-party attribution is just looking at those IDs. So that ID could have been someone that went and purchased. They never saw an ad. You have technology that goes and finds users that are going to convert anyways. So it looks good. You throw more budget at it. And then that's how fraud runs rampant, right? It's kind of crazy to me, right? Like you need to do it a different way in programmatic. And in my opinion, like the biggest North Star in programmatic where everything is fragmented is content. Is saying, okay, does this content relevant? Is this content resonating with this audience, right? Like, is this impression opportunity based off of everything I know about this audience. Is this a good ad to serve? Not, hey, this ID that's been passed through 20 different companies, it's been recycled, whatever, right? Like it's been abridged into this, right? Like, is this the best opportunity, right? And 95+% of the time, it is the ID that they're going and chasing, which is just, it's crazy. That's why we have such a broken internet right now.
No, of course. And like I actually never thought about it like on the other side on what are the actual challenges of the advertisers or the media buyers to like trying to look for the correct users, because like how I see it on my end is just like, right, you're the publisher, you're already like struggling with the content, with like CEO core web vital updates with Google. You're struggling with AI becoming one of the biggest search tools, but not doing like correct attributions on how your audience gets there. And then you have all of your struggles with what's creating content nowadays, that it has to be like quality. If we change strategies from quantity to quality, if we add paywalls, etc. And then there's the all the part of the audience that is like, okay, how do we actually monetize this audience? And we help advertisers on the other end that they're like 4 companies away from us or even more. They don't know anything about our site. They just know that we have a site and maybe perhaps the main vertical of the site. So then like in the part of the audiences, we definitely have to decide if we are using a DMP or if we're going to use 5 of the most important ID solutions that are out there to make sure that we're monetizing correctly on the Trade Desk, on DV360, etc. But then we don't know what happens. And I think you brought like a really interesting topic that I would love for us to like dive in a bit more on, like how exactly fraud happens with those IDs on the buyer side, because like for us it's just we don't know what happens afterwards.
Yeah, no, I mean it's crazy. Like just bots could get a hold of IDs, right? Like it's not like that's how when you have a list of IDs that you think are safe, right? They're just dropping IDs that they're getting, however they're getting them, right? Like they could go and scrape IDs off of anywhere. They could pluck them out. I'm not an expert in fraud at all, but like the reason why you have these IDs that are sitting in a DSP that were like, considered safe, the reason why they deliver on so much fraud is because fraudsters can just exploit it, right? Like there's practice called, like probabilistic ID bridging, where like I'm sure that there's solutions that have very safe versions of that, but like in every form of programmatic, there's also bad actors, right? That like take that same methodology of like probabilistic ID bridging and dropping any ID into a bid request and saying like, yeah, I thought it was them, right? So like if anyone even like questions it, like they have a way to question it, they'd be like, well, I probabilistically ID bridge that ID into the bid request, right? So it is a massive problem. It's one of the things that like buyers need to combat it actively by, going and looking, am I buying direct? Am I buying, like what sellers am I buying from? What inventory sources am I buying from? Like who is actually selling me impressions, right? Like going and looking at, hey, who is this seller that is selling me this impression? Let me Google it and figure out who the seller is, right? Like that's hard. That is hard work to do. It's important work because what's the alternative? If you don't go and actively optimize your supply, block sellers, figure out, where am I getting good traffic from, or like, where am I buying from good sellers? Where am I not buying from where am I buying bad sellers, right? Like figuring that out takes a lot of time, right? Unless you have a solution that can do SPO for you, right? Which is great, solves you a lot of time. But like if you don't have that solution, absolutely need to figure that out. And the alternative is just going and massively buying fraud, and your CPMs go way up and you don't even know it. You think you're buying at a low CPM, but your actual human CPM is like $1,000, right?
Yeah, no, of course, like that absolutely makes sense. And it's actually very curious to see like how, of course, like fraud is present in all parts of the ecosystem. So just seeing this like a new challenge on the buying side is it's very interesting for me. And opposed to that, so how would it work instead of like just buying through identity solutions or different IDs targeting these IDs? How would advertisers would actually be able to target the content using your solution, for example?
Yeah, so it's really easy. For us, all you would have to do is you go to Anuvo.com and you can create there's a section at the top that just says build a model. And then you would go there and you could just literally go there, write a prompt to our system, and it will generate an entire model for you of like, this is why I would make decisions. Is this the type of audience that you would want to be in front of? It's not a black box. It's not like, hey, go into a DSP, I'm going to push you a segment and it's auto intenders and it's 5 million users, right? Like that's what you get most of the time in programmatic, right? Like you just get a segment, you have no idea why those users are sitting there, and then you go and target against that segment and then you're off to the races. With our system, you go in there, you customize your own model. You tell our system exactly what you're trying to target. Our system is built completely off of language. It's not built off of, user IDs, needing to find user IDs. It figures out what you're trying to target based off of what you tell it. You could give it an entire brief. You could literally give it one word, right? It's just, how you would want to customize it for yourself. You could either customize the model more by saying, okay, I want to change out some concepts. I want to add more concepts, right? I want to be restricted to a certain region. I want to actually go towards, concepts that resonate higher income, lower income, whatever, right? It's open to you. It's not, hey, here's a mysterious segment, go and target against it. So like in terms of transparency and effectiveness, right? Now you're staying in front of what people care about. You are staying in front of like what you care about targeting, right? You're not just going and targeting just blanket auto intenders, right? You're going and saying, I want to target this very specific audience, or I want to target this very wide audience, right? It's all completely custom to you. And like, in my opinion, in programmatic, the more custom that you can get to yourself and the better that you can figure out how the signals actually work in programmatic, you could get so much value from it, right? Like programmatic is awesome. When you think about just like display ads, they kind of get written off a lot because of like all the fraud allegations and all of this. But when you do programmatic right, the CPMs are so much lower than the walled gardens, right? They're so much lower and you're targeting so much like massively more impressions, right? So mathematically, you're going to do a lot of good when you do it well. It's just hard. But we help push you in the right direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to quote you on that programmatic is awesome when you do it right.
Yeah.
Because I do agree. Yeah, I think it's very challenging in terms of it's a massive ecosystem and trying to figure out like where exactly is the audience that's going to work for you. And depending on just imagine like the agencies are running like hundreds of campaigns for different advertisers with different KPIs, and KPIs get more complex every year. So trying to not only measure attribution for programmatic, it's hard itself because of course how fragmented things are. I think you're really on point to saying that when you have a lot of data to inform the models, then you can be on the right track of doing like a great strategy itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, like accurate and stable data points for the channel, right? Like, I don't think there's anything more accurate than content. Like when it comes to like, what content are they reading, right? Like this is very, very, like this would resonate, right? Based off of the content that doesn't pass through all these different intermediaries. It doesn't need to get Frankensteined into another solution, right? It's saying like, does this piece of content right now, like based off of all the data points that I know about this audience, does this piece of content right now resonate with this audience? Yes or no, right? And it's a very simple question to ask, but it's a very complex, thing that's going on, right? I mean, I'm probably biased on this, but in my opinion, in going and sifting through programmatic, it's going and figuring out the most stable data points, and that to me is the most stable data point there is.
Absolutely. No, it absolutely makes sense, and you're super on point. I was wondering while you were talking, so I would guess like this solution was built a lot for like everything that's related to web properties, but like how about like in-app? Is this possible as well in everything that's in-app? I'm thinking just in-app in general, CTV.
So in-app and CTV, so we would do a solution more around location, right? So it's location and the content and the genres. So like when you're talking CTV, we'll go and model zip codes, right? So like this zip code is modeling against, so we have a whole geograph, right? Like we would know what geolocations are matching these models. And then based off of the zip code, based off of the app, and based off of the genre of the app, how well does this match the client's custom model? And that actually, you would be surprised, is more effective than IP targeting. Because IP targeting, it gets very, very, very murky in IP targeting, right? Like if you have an inaccurate IP, like you just essentially served a blank ad, right? Because you just served to the complete wrong user. But when you're going and targeting like geo relevance, like the geo relevance and the geo, like the geo factor is such a huge miss that I think that a lot of programmatic buyers don't think about. Like when I think about my city, if, for example, right, and I'm going to like humanize this for everyone. My city is very much so farm, rural, right? Everyone drives trucks just because there's a lot of dirt roads, right? Like everybody buys trucks. I live in a DMA that has this rural community, but it's surrounded by a lot of cities, right? So if you served a Kia ad in my DMA, right, it would probably be good, right? It would probably be okay. If you served a Kia ad in my zip code, no one would buy it. Like you would get zero buyers, right? So when you can understand the need for a certain product in a certain zip code, right, or a service or whatever, it could be very, very powerful, right? So when you match that up to like genres of content and apps, right, then you can make very good decisions without the need of an IP, right, without the need of an ID. You can make good decisions, and it opens up a lot of opportunities to serve ads that you wouldn't have otherwise, because CTV is like a whole nother can of worms. It is an entire other can of worms. The IDs are not stable. They're very dynamic, right? So those IDs are constantly churning, and you're targeting at like an entire household level. So how do you ensure you're targeting the right person in the household, right? You always get that question from your client. Right. So when you're saying, okay, I'm doing a combination of the genre that this audience would care about in combination with the zip code and the app that they would go and consume content, you could be, very, very accurate.
Of course. I actually didn't know that it was better to target, by these versus IPs. I think that information it's very interesting.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's actually taking the ID out of it completely. It's just saying, hey, like, I don't care if there's an ID here. This bid request is good that's coming from this publisher, right? I'm going to go and serve an ad against it. So I set up custom, all these, if you get a lot of publishers that watch this, like I set up a lot of publisher deals where I'm like, hey, I want you to push me everything. Like push me the bid requests that don't contain IDs, because they will push you what they think you'll transact on, right? Like they don't want to push you a ton of QPS that you won't transact on, because they also have to pay for that, right? Like there's computing costs that goes into all of this stuff. So I tell them like, yes, push me that, because I could still make a decision on it. So I don't know what the percentage is off the top of my head. I think it's like only like 30%. I mean, someone's going to fact check me and scream at me. Like only like 30% of CTV inventory actually contains an ID that's targetable, right? So there's a ton of other inventory available that are just, not seeing ads, or they're just seeing a blanket run of network ad that doesn't resonate for them or their area.
Yeah, no, that 100% makes sense, and not to mention that, of course, there's so much inventory that people actually don't see. Like, how many apps do you actually watch?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like at my house, so when we start talking about optimizing CTV supply too, like I am very much a stickler when it comes to optimizing CTV supply. I always say that CTV SPO is the most simple because there's like 10 of them, right? That you really care about. After that, a lot of them are just there for like buyers that want to like flash their low CPMs, right? Like I got this super low CPMs. Like, well, what did you buy? Right? Did you buy a refrigerator? Right? Like a CTV ad on a refrigerator? Or did you buy like an actual big screen in someone's living room watching the Olympics? Right? Like the CPMs are going to be massively different there. But when you go and look at the actual real like business impact on, you know, your advertising dollars had on that business impact, it's always going to be that Olympics ad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And literally like laughing so hard about the refrigerator ad. But yeah, no, you're super on point, super on key. And I think you've given us a lot of like great information. I've learned so much from this episode. And for this last minutes that we have together, Eric, I wanted to get your opinion as an expert on what are like some of the trends that you're probably going to see that we talk more about like this year.
I think the cookieless world is kind of it's dead, right? Like the cookieless wave. But I think that it's important for people to understand that in programmatic, people need to make decisions other than the ID because the ID is so gameable. That didn't answer your question at all. I think that the way that we're moving is very much so into the agentic future, right? Like agentic is everywhere, and adoption of that, I think that we are going to figure out what that is, right? Like, because everyone's talking about it, a lot of people are activating on it, right? And where this fits in agentic, like what I'm talking about, how our solution works, how that fits in the agentic future, right? Where you're going and telling, you know, your buyer agent to go and talk to someone seller agent of like, you know, what do I want to target and like how do I stay in front of this audience that I'm telling you that I want to target, right? I think that once you start going into the decision layer on that, this type of like conversation that we're having, that's going to be a big factor in it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does, it does. But thank you so much for the insight there. I think it's quite interesting, and we're gonna drop all your info on the podcast and the YouTube so people can reach out and learn more about this because I think there's not a lot of people like talking about this. So it's definitely gonna help to make the industry more aware of like just be aware of your data points.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for being here today and giving us all this great information. It was amazing to have you. And I'm happy that at least the people that are going to watch us on YouTube, they'll be able to see your really cool Pokemon slide collection.
There you go. Yeah, I will definitely. I hope I get the crown for, you know, the Pokemon authentic card collector of programmatic. I won the programmatic People's Choice, but I think this one would be way cooler to win.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.